Part 1. The dog that wouldn't stop digging. The old dog was digging again. Started at dawn like it always did. Every morning, right when the first ray of light hit the broken fence post behind the cabin, Cooper wandered out to the edge of the backyard, to the same exact patch of dry, cracked dirt, and started clawing at the earth like something buried there was calling to him. Jack Marlowe watched from the porch, arms folded tight across his chest, coffee gone cold in his hand. Cooper's wiry back legs trembled slightly as he worked. Age had crept into his joints like rust, but his front paws struck the ground with the same unwavering rhythm as they had back in Kandahar. Scratch. Day. Pause. Scratch. Day. You're gonna wear a hole to China, Jack muttered. The dog didn't respond, didn't even glance back, just kept digging. Jack sighed. Coop. There's nothing there. Still no reaction. He wanted to turn away, to go inside, maybe pour himself something stronger than black coffee, but something kept his feet rooted to the porch. That dog wasn't just scratching out of boredom. Cooper had been trained for IEDs, for narcotics, for hidden enemy caches buried 6 feet under. He didn't dig without purpose. Not ever. Jack stepped off the porch and made his way toward him. All right, what are we after today? He said softly, kneeling down beside the hole. Dust curled into the air as Cooper paused and looked up at him, tongue hanging out, eyes alert. The look in them wasn't playful. It wasn't senile either. It was urgent. Then his front paw swept aside a clump of dirt, and something small and metallic glinted in the sunlight. Jack's breath caught. He reached down, brushing away the soil with trembling fingers. It was a charm bracelet. Silver, mostly tarnished now, the kind you'd buy at a little shop downtown. Tiny engraved trinkets hung from its links. A music note, a heart, a star. Jack's hand froze when he touched the last charm. Tiny horseshoe. The metal was worn nearly smooth from years of nervous fiddling. He knew it instantly. Ellie. The name escaped him like a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His heart lurched. There was no mistaking it. That bracelet had belonged to his daughter. The same one she wore on her wrist the last day she was seen alive. But that was 2 years ago, and this bracelet had been buried. Jack stared at the hole, then at Cooper. This wasn't here before, he whispered. Cooper sat down beside him, letting out a low huff of air. His tail didn't wag. He just watched Jack, eyes unblinking, almost waiting. The first time Jack lost Ellie, it was to a war. He was in his second tour when she turned 12, and she stopped writing letters after he missed her school recital. By the time he got home, there was a wall between them he didn't know how to cross. He tried, God knew he tried, but he always ended up staring at old family photos instead of talking, saying things too late, missing things he didn't know were important until they were gone. The second time he lost her, it was for good. She vanished on a cold October night. No forced entry, no signs of struggle. Her phone was left behind, her bed unslept in, just gone. And when the sheriff's department called off the search 3 weeks later, citing no actionable leads, Jack didn't argue. He just shut down. He bought this remote cabin, took Cooper, and left town. He didn't want sympathy, didn't want company. He wanted silence. But silence never stayed. Jack sat at the kitchen table that evening, the bracelet between his fingers. The trinkets clicked together softly when he rolled them, over and over, like worry beads for the soul. He'd shown it to the sheriff back then. Sheriff Denton had taken a photo, nodded, and logged it. That was it. Ellie's bracelet, her locket, even her diary. They'd all gone into evidence boxes that were now, presumably, collecting dust in some forgotten storage locker. So why was this here, now, and buried? He looked at Cooper. The old dog lay at the foot of the door, chin on his paws, watching. Always watching. You're trying to tell me something, aren't you? Cooper didn't move. Jack set the bracelet down on the table and opened the drawer beside him. The flashlight still had batteries. The Glock had a full magazine. He grabbed both. We're going for a walk. The forest behind the cabin had long since overgrown the trail that led into it. Thick brush reached up to Jack's thighs. The wind howled low through the trees like it was holding its breath. Cooper led the way, pausing now and then to sniff the ground. Then, without warning, he turned sharply and padded toward a grove of young pines. His tail stiff, ears perked. There was another spot, another patch of disturbed earth. He began digging. Jack's breath came faster as he knelt beside him. The smell of fresh dirt and something faintly metallic hit his nostrils. He scraped with his hands. A few inches down, he struck something. He pulled out a small chain, a broken one. At the end of it was a tiny oval locket, dense-scarred, but unmistakable. He knew it too well. It was Ellie's. She wore it since she was 10. It had her mother's picture inside. The clasp had been broken for months. Jack had promised to fix it and never did. He told the sheriff about that locket, too, but it hadn't been found. Until now. They returned to the house in silence. Jack didn't eat, didn't drink. He just sat at the table, the locket and bracelet lined up neatly before him. Cooper lay down under the window, but his eyes remained open. Jack lit a cigarette. His hands shook. "I buried her," he said aloud. "I thought I buried her." His voice broke. "I thought I could bury the pain, the guilt, everything. But you—" He looked at the dog. "You didn't forget. You didn't stop." Cooper's tail gave a single slow thump against the floor. The next morning, Jack drove into town. It was the first time in months, maybe a year. The town looked the same, too quiet, too clean, like someone had scrubbed it of memory. He parked outside the sheriff's office. Inside, Sheriff Nora Denton looked like she hadn't aged a day. Still tall, still composed, still wearing that badge like it gave her answers. She looked up from her paperwork and froze. "Jack, you remember me, Sheriff?" Her jaw tightened. "Course I do." He stepped forward and placed the bracelet and locket on her desk. "Tell me how they ended up buried behind my cabin. After 2 years. Nora looked at the items, then back at him. "I don't know. That's not good enough. You left. You checked out." Jack's voice hardened. "So someone checked in? Dug around my land and buried evidence." Nora's face remained still. "These items, were they found together?"
No.
She leaned back. "Maybe someone found them and didn't want to get involved. Maybe it's someone playing games. Maybe it's someone cleaning up." She blinked. "I want to reopen the case," Jack said. Nora sighed. "There's nothing left to reopen."
No witnesses.
"No leads. You have evidence." She shook her head. "Two old objects don't make a case." Jack's jaw clenched. "They were buried, Nora. And you have a dog that dug them up. That's not a crime scene. That's a story." Jack leaned in. "Cooper's never been wrong. Not in Afghanistan. Not in Iraq. Not now." Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Fear? "Take it to someone else," she said quietly. Jack stood there for a moment, searching her face. "You didn't even ask me where the second item was found." She didn't respond. He turned and walked out. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the porch with Cooper beside him. The wind stirred the trees in the distance. Coyotes howled somewhere beyond the ridge. "You knew," he whispered, stroking Cooper's ears. "You knew she was still here." The dog leaned against him, warm and heavy. Jack closed his eyes. "She's not resting, Co-op, and neither are we." He looked out into the darkness. The ground held secrets, but now he had the one partner who never stopped believing. They'd dig up every one of them, even if it killed them. Part 2. Scratching at the past. The locket sat on the table like a ghost. Jack hadn't touched it since placing it down. A broken clasp stared back at him like an unfinished sentence. It wasn't just a memory anymore, it was evidence. Cooper had pulled it from the earth, and Jack couldn't shake the thought that something, or someone, had deliberately buried it. The wind pushed against the windows in low groans, and in the quiet, Jack could hear Cooper's slow breathing from the bedroom. The old war dog had collapsed into sleep the moment they got home, spent from the exertion and age. Jack, on the other hand, hadn't rested a second. He'd waited 2 years for silence. Now that it was over, the noise of truth rushing in was deafening, and he needed more of it. The next morning, Jack didn't bother with coffee. He packed a canteen, a folding spade, and Cooper's old leash into a worn canvas bag and loaded Cooper into the truck. "Back to work, buddy," he muttered, buckling the harness gently around Cooper's chest. The town faded behind them in the rearview mirror as they headed back into the foothills. Jack pulled off the road near the edge of what used to be the trail to Miller's Creek. It was where the search teams had combed the woods 2 years ago. It was also where Ellie's jacket was found, snagged on a bramble bush, a mile from the water. But the trail was now overgrown, and the brush had reclaimed the area like it was trying to erase what happened. But Cooper remembered. The dog jumped down stiffly from the truck and immediately turned toward the tree line. Jack followed close behind. Cooper walked slowly at first, nose brushing the forest floor, then paused, circled a small clearing, and stopped. His body stiffened, ears perked. Then he started digging. Jack's breath hitched. "No way," he whispered. He dropped the pack and knelt beside the dog, hands tearing into the soil. Only a few inches down, something solid emerged. A brass casing, long buried, partially corroded, but unmistakable. Jack held it up to the light. A .40 caliber shell casing, and he knew damn well what that meant. Jack drove straight to Nora Denton's office again. This time he didn't wait for permission. "You're not gonna like this," he said, bursting through the door. He tossed the casing onto her desk. Nora stared at it, expression unreadable. "What's this?" "Ballistics will tell you," Jack snapped. .40 caliber. Government issue. She didn't flinch. "Why didn't this turn up in your initial sweep?" Nora picked it up, rolled it between her fingers, then set it down. "Because this was never submitted." "Where'd you get it?" "Same place Ellie's jacket was found. Near Miller's Creek." She leaned back slowly. "That area was cleared." "Not good enough. Cooper found it in less than 5 minutes." Nora raised an eyebrow. "And now you want me to test this? Based on your dog's memory. He's the reason I'm standing here. You should have listened to him the first time." She exhaled through her nose, then picked up the shell casing again. "I'll send it to the lab." "And what if it matches a service weapon?" She didn't answer. Her eyes flicked to the side of the desk for a moment. It was brief, but Jack caught it. "Nora," he said, voice low, "why does this feel like you already know what I'm going to find?" Her face hardened. "Be careful, Jack. Digging up the past can bury you." Back at the cabin, Jack pulled a dusty plastic tub out from beneath his bed. Inside were files, copies of Ellie's missing persons report, witness statements, and case notes the sheriff had given him when he demanded them after the investigation was closed. He laid them across the table like puzzle pieces. The town said Ellie left the house around 9 p.m. Witnesses placed her walking toward the South Ridge. Then nothing. But Jack knew his daughter. She wasn't aimless. She didn't walk without a reason. Then he saw it. A forgotten note, scribbled by one of the deputies. "Local pastor says Ellie stopped by around 8:45. Nervous. Didn't stay long." Jack frowned. The church. He hadn't spoken to Pastor Caleb since the funeral. If Ellie went there that night, maybe she'd said something. Something no one had followed up on. He grabbed his keys. "Come on, Co-op. We're not done yet." The First Baptist Church of Elkridge hadn't changed. The paint still peeled from the columns, and the same rusting bell sat crooked in its tower. Pastor Caleb was inside, sorting hymnals by hand. He looked up, surprised. "Jack?" Jack nodded. "Long time. You look good." Jack chuckled darkly. "Don't lie in a church." Caleb offered a small smile. "I need to ask you something," Jack said. Caleb stiffened. 2 years ago, the night Ellie disappeared, you told a deputy she came here." The pastor swallowed. "I remember. What did she say?" Caleb's fingers curled around the edge of the pew. "Jack, I didn't think it meant anything. At the time." Jack took a step closer. "Tell me anyway." Caleb looked around the empty sanctuary, then back to Jack. "She was scared. Kept looking over her shoulder. Said she needed to confess something." Jack's jaw tightened. She said, "He followed me here. From your house." "What?" Caleb nodded. She wouldn't say who, just that someone had followed her. She looked pale, panicked, said she needed to record something. Record? Caleb hesitated. She asked if she could use the confessional, said it made her feel safe. So I let her. She was in there maybe 5 minutes. And then, she left. I thought maybe she'd calm down. But I never saw her again. Jack's heart pounded. You said she wanted to record something. Did she? Caleb reached into the pocket of his robe and pulled out a small audio recorder. Dusty. Old. I didn't want to betray her trust, but I kept it. Just in case. Jack took it with shaking hands. The cabin was silent except for the click of the recorder. Jack sat at the kitchen table, Cooper beside him. He pressed play. Static. Then Ellie's voice, soft but shaking. My name is Ellie Marlowe. If you're hearing this, something happened to me. Someone's following me. Someone from this town. Jack's knuckles turned white. I went to Mayor Ridge's house to drop off flyers. I wasn't supposed to be inside, but the door was open, and I heard them talking. Him and another man. About money. About something from overseas. Something they buried. Jack froze. I saw pictures. Military files. He saw me. He chased me. I got out, but now, someone's watching the house. I know it. I feel it. The recording ended with a soft sob. Then silence. The next morning, Jack stood at the edge of the mayor's property with binoculars pressed to his eyes. Cooper sat beside him, alert. Mayor Allen Ridge had always been too clean, too smooth, always smiling at the cameras. And now Jack knew why. Ellie had stumbled onto something, and it had killed her. That night, Jack and Cooper slipped past the mayor's gates. They avoided the cameras, stuck to the shadows. Cooper moved with a quiet grace that belied his age. The flower garden near the side fence caught Cooper's attention. He froze, sniffed, then began digging. Jack joined him, hands bare. The soil was loose, turned recently. Then his fingers struck something. He pulled it free. Dog tags. But not Ellie's. Not even hers to begin with. These tags were Jack's. From Afghanistan. He hadn't seen them since the ambush. Since Ridge disappeared during the last mission and was presumed dead. But now, he turned the tags over. There was blood on them. Fresh. Jack stared at the tags for a long time that night. Someone had planted them. Someone had been in his home. On his land. Someone wanted to remind him they were watching. And now they knew he was watching back. Part 3. The Mayor's Garden. Jack Marlowe didn't sleep that night. The dog tags lay on the kitchen table, stained with something too red and too fresh to be a coincidence. He sat across from them, shoulders rigid, eyes locked on the twisted metal like they might start whispering answers if he stared long enough. They didn't. Cooper slept beside the back door, one eye half open, his breathing heavy and rhythmic. Even in sleep, the old war dog remained half alert, as if he too knew this wasn't over. Something was happening, something dark and deliberate, and someone wanted Jack to feel hunted. He did. He also felt something he hadn't in a long time, purpose. At sunrise, Jack took a knife from the drawer, strapped it under his jacket, and packed the tags in a sealed plastic bag. He tucked it in his coat pocket. Cooper stretched stiffly, then patted over and pressed his snout into Jack's leg. A quiet affirmation. I need you sharp today, Jack murmured. Cooper's tail gave a slow wag. Jack didn't drive into town. Instead, he took the long road that curved around the ridge to the east. From there, he could park without being seen and hike in through the service trail behind Mayor Ridge's estate. He hadn't come to talk. He came to watch. The estate was perched like a king's castle on the highest hill in Elkridge. All white stone and black wrought iron fencing. Like it was trying too hard to say something about class and status. Jack had always hated it. He settled into a low crouch behind a thicket of juniper, binoculars pressed to his eyes. A gardener was moving through the yard, different from the one Jack remembered years ago. Young, lanky, with jittery hands. He trimmed the same bush 3 times. Then the mayor stepped out. Alan Ridge looked the same. Polished, composed, face like a wax mask. He sipped coffee from a white porcelain mug and spoke quietly into his phone, pacing the patio like a man reviewing war plans. Jack adjusted the zoom on the binoculars. Ridge's lips were hard to read, but Jack caught fragments. Handled it. No loose ends. Dog's just a complication. Dog. Jack's heart thudded. The mayor glanced toward the edge of the property, toward the flower garden, right where Cooper had dug up the dog tags. The mayor knew. He knew someone had been there, and that meant Jack had a clock ticking on his head. Back at the cabin, Jack locked every window and door, checked the pistol under his bed, and unpacked a military-grade field camera he hadn't touched in years. He set it up at the edge of the woods, facing the cabin and the back trail. A red light blinked softly to life. Let's see who visits tonight. He sat on the porch steps beside Cooper and stared at the treeline. You didn't miss a thing, did you? Cooper leaned his head on Jack's leg. That night, the dreams came hard. Not of war, of Ellie. She was 8 again, laughing as she ran across the field behind their old house. Long red hair bouncing like wildfire. She held a kite in one hand and a lollipop in the other. Jack chased her, yelling playfully, heart full. Then the sky turned black, and she was gone, and in her place was a scream. Jack woke drenched in sweat, heart slamming against his ribs. Cooper stood at the door, growling low. Something was outside. Jack grabbed the Glock from the nightstand and moved to the window. Movement. Near the trees. Not an animal. 2 silhouettes. He crept to the porch and slipped outside, weapon raised. Cooper followed, silent as mist. The figures darted through the brush. Too fast for hikers, too slow for kids. They moved like professionals. They were heading toward the house. Jack raised his weapon. Stop right there. One froze. The other bolted. Cooper leapt forward with a snarl, chasing the runner into the trees. The first figure turned. A woman. Jack's finger hovered near the trigger. Then her voice stopped him cold. Don't shoot. I'm not with them. She raised her hands slowly. Dark hair. Freckles. Maybe late 20s. Not someone Jack recognized. Who are you? He demanded. Jamie. Jamie Holt. I'm a reporter. Jack frowned. From where? Freelance. I write for independent media. Real investigative stuff. Jack didn't lower the gun. I followed the mayor's financials 6 months ago. Found links to offshore accounts and black contracts. She glanced around. Then I found your name, Jack. You and your dog. And your daughter. Jack's stomach twisted. You're here about Ellie. Jamie nodded. And whoever that was chasing me, they don't want you asking questions. Jack's mouth went dry. How long have you been watching? I saw you dig up the dog tags. I saw what Ridge did after. Jack stepped closer. What did Ridge do? She hesitated. He met with the sheriff. Jack's blood turned to ice. Nora? She's not innocent, Jack. Jamie handed him a flash drive. Mayor Ridge isn't who he says he is. His real name is Stephen Ridgeson. He was in your unit. He disappeared just before a report on stolen military gear went missing. Jack stared at her. You're saying he faked his death? Jamie nodded. And built a new life on what he took. Jack's knees nearly gave out. And Ellie found out, he whispered. Jamie looked down. She must have. And they silenced her. The pastor. He's the only one who might know what else she saw. Jack nodded slowly. Then Cooper emerged from the woods, panting hard, a piece of torn fabric in his mouth. It was a sleeve, black tactical cloth. Whoever the other intruder was, Cooper got close. Real close. That morning, Jack and Jamie returned to the church. Pastor Caleb was outside, watering the azaleas. He looked up, startled. Jack. Jack held up the flash drive. We need to talk. Caleb hesitated, then nodded and unlocked the front door. Inside, the sanctuary was still. Stained glass threw soft colors across the wooden pews. You said Ellie recorded something, Jack said. But that wasn't all, was it? Caleb sat heavily in the front row. No, he admitted. She came to me twice. Jack blinked. You never told the sheriff that. I didn't trust her. Jamie leaned in. What did Ellie say the second time? She said she found names, files, pictures. She said one of the men from the files looked familiar. Said he looked just like the mayor, but younger. And in uniform. Caleb swallowed. She was scared. She asked me to hold onto something for her. I locked it in the church safe. Jack's eyes widened. Do you still have it? Caleb nodded. 5 minutes later, he returned with a sealed manila envelope. Inside were 5 photographs. Grainy, dated, but unmistakable. Stephen Ridgeson, in full combat gear, standing beside crates marked, confidential, do not release. Beside him, Sheriff Nora Denton, younger, smiling. Jack's hands shook. They were both in on it, he whispered. Jamie leaned over his shoulder. This is more than corruption. This is conspiracy. Treason. And Ellie died for it, Jack said. Cooper let out a low growl, eyes fixed on the door. Jack turned. A black SUV pulled up outside, and the sheriff stepped out. Nora Denton stood in the church doorway, hand on her holster. You've made this real messy, Jack. Jack stepped in front of Caleb and Jamie. So it's true. She didn't answer. Why? He asked. Her expression twisted with something between regret and bitterness. I didn't kill your daughter, she said quietly. But you helped cover it up. She nodded once. I didn't know what Ridge was doing back then. Not really. By the time I figured it out, it was too late. Ellie got too close. I tried to warn her. You failed, Jack snapped. Silence. I can't undo it, Nora said, voice cracking. But I can fix it. She tossed a folder on the pew. Everything I have. Locations. Contact. Witnesses. You leak this and Ridge burns. Jack stared at it. Jamie picked it up carefully. What's the catch? Jack asked. You give me 24 hours to disappear. Jack clenched his fists. You think you get to walk away? I think I'm the only shot you've got at making sure this ends without more bodies, she replied. Including yours. Jack looked at Cooper. The dog stared at the sheriff, unmoving. Then Jack turned away. Go. She paused, nodded, and stepped back out into the fading light. That night, Jack stood at the grave marker behind the cabin. Ellie's name, carved into stone. No body, just memory. I should have known, he whispered. Cooper stood beside him. We're gonna finish this. For you. He turned to Jamie, who stood with the folder in hand. We go public tomorrow. She nodded. Time to bury them like they buried her. Part 4. Dogs never forget. It began with the sound of claws on wood. Jack stirred awake just before dawn, blinking into the still dark room. The air was cold, too cold, and something felt off. Then he heard it again. A scratching, desperate and rhythmic. Cooper. Jack threw off the blanket and rushed toward the back door. The old war dog was pawing furiously at the floor near the threshold, his entire body trembling. Jack flipped the light switch. There was nothing on the floor except the faded wood and Cooper's worn paws, already raw from digging. Hey, easy. Jack knelt down. What is it, boy? Cooper whined and sat, tail stiff against the floorboards. His eyes were wild. Not scared, but urgent, locked on the space just under the doormat. Jack lifted the mat. Just floor. But then he noticed it, the outline of a plank slightly offset from the rest. He fetched a screwdriver and pried it up. A small cavity had been carved into the floor. Inside, wrapped in wax paper and sealed in a plastic pouch, was a Polaroid photograph. Jack stared at it. It was a photo of Ellie, taken from a distance as if by a long-range lens. She was walking through the town square. In the corner of the photo, scrawled in faded pen, she got too close. Jack's hand began to tremble. Who put this here? He whispered. Cooper just stared. Jack's chest tightened. Not with fear, with rage. Later that morning, Jack, Jamie, and Cooper sat at the kitchen table. The sun had barely risen, but they were already deep into the sheriff's folder. Names, bank statements, satellite maps, everything Nora had promised. Jamie spread the documents like puzzle pieces. She wasn't bluffing, she murmured. These are real. Deposits traced to Richson's offshore accounts. Ties to stolen military shipments. Even fake identities. Jack tapped a name halfway down the page. Tyler Kincaid. Who's that? Jamie scanned the note. Private contractor.
Ex-marine.
Helped with security logistics, whatever that means. Went dark 5 years ago. Jack nodded. He's the one Ridge called when things needed cleaning up. Cooper let out a low, almost imperceptible growl. Jack turned. The dog stood at the window, ears alert. There, across the road, sat a black sedan. Windows tinted. Engine idling. Watching. They didn't wait for the knock. Jack handed Jamie the burner phone. Take the documents. Head to the next town. Check into the Rosemont Inn under Sawyer. Wait for my call. Jamie hesitated. What about you? I need to make sure Cooper's safe. He won't travel well now. Cooper had slowed noticeably over the last week. The digging, the trauma, the age. It was all catching up. I'll meet you once I'm sure no one's tailing. Jamie gave a reluctant nod, grabbed her things and ducked out the back. Jack stood in the center of the cabin, staring at Cooper. You still up for one more mission? Cooper's tail thumped once. Jack didn't sleep. Instead, he waited until the sedan left, just after midnight, then packed Cooper into the truck and drove 2 towns over, to a boarded-up veterinary clinic that had once belonged to his cousin. It still had power, clean water, and, most importantly, an old kennel in the back. It wasn't much, but it was safe. He left Cooper there with food, blankets, and a small stuffed animal Ellie used to carry around as a child. Cooper curled around it, whimpering once as Jack closed the gate. Jack crouched beside him. I need you to stay here, all right? Just for a while. Cooper licked his hand, slow and heavy. Jack swallowed. I'll come back. He stood, stared at the dog for one long moment, then turned and walked out. He met Jamie the next morning at a roadside diner outside Rosemont. She was already seated, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, documents spread discreetly beneath the breakfast menu. Jack slid into the booth. She pushed a flash drive toward him. I've uploaded everything to a secure cloud. We leaked this today. We won't get another chance. Jack nodded. But we need one last thing, Jamie said. Something personal. Something visual. A reason for people to believe this isn't just another scandal. Jack hesitated. Like what? She leaned in. Proof that Ridgeson isn't who he says he is. Jack thought for a moment. Then it hit him. Camp Greystone, he said. Jamie blinked. What's that? Our last forward operations base in Afghanistan, where Ridgeson was last seen alive. There were files, hard drives, footage. If any of it survived, would it still be there? Jack nodded grimly. They buried it when they pulled out. I helped do it. Jamie stared. So you're saying the only proof that could destroy him is buried in an abandoned outpost? In a desert? In another country? Jack took a sip of his coffee. Exactly. They didn't need to go to Afghanistan. The drive led them to a self-storage facility outside of Helena, Montana, where Jack had shipped half his gear when he left active duty. Unit 317. Locked. Undisturbed. Inside. A footlocker wrapped in military canvas. He cracked it open. There, under layers of uniforms, MREs, and field gear, sat a metal drive. Label. Greystone_Echo_09. Jack stared at it like it was radioactive. He handed it to Jamie. Get this to your editor. Now. She nodded and stepped away to make the call. Jack's eyes drifted toward the phone. And that's when he saw the blinking red light. The tracker. They never made it back to the car. As they exited the facility, 2 black SUVs blocked the lot. Doors flew open. Tyler Kincaid stepped out. Broad. Bite. Smiling like a snake. Well, Jack Marlowe. Jack stepped in front of Jamie. Kincaid glanced at the flash drive in her hand. You know, I liked your daughter. She was smart, brave, but curiosity. He tilted his head. It's dangerous. Jack's fingers twitched toward his sidearm. You touch her again. You'll what? Kincaid grinned. Your dog's not here to save you this time. Then came the sound they didn't expect. A growl. Low. Feral. Cooper. From behind a parked van, the war dog emerged, eyes locked on Kincaid. Jack's jaw dropped. How did you? Cooper lunged. Kincaid barely had time to react before 80 pounds of scarred muscle slammed into his chest, knocking him to the pavement. Jack didn't waste the opening. Gun drawn. 2 quick shots. Kincaid's men scattered. Jamie grabbed the drive and ran. Jack knelt beside Cooper, who stood panting over Kincaid's unconscious form, blood on his muzzle. The dog looked up at Jack. I told you to stay, Jack whispered. Cooper just wagged his tail. They made it out. Jamie's editor published the story that night. Every photo, every name, every wire transfer. By morning, Stephen Ridgeson exposed as fugitive war criminal trended across the nation. The mayor vanished. Arrest warrants were issued, and Elkridge was never the same. But Cooper was fading. His breathing was shallow, his legs weak. Jack carried him back to the cabin, wrapped him in Ellie's old quilt, and lay beside him on the porch as the sun began to rise. You saved us, Jack whispered. Cooper blinked slowly. You saved her. You brought her home. The dog let out a soft sigh and closed his eyes. Jack buried him behind the house, next to Ellie's marker, and planted a flag between them. 2 heroes, 2 warriors, side by side. Part 5. The Secret in the Sermon. Jack had always believed that justice, if it came at all, came too late. He'd seen it overseas. He'd seen it back home. And now he sat alone on the edge of his porch, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug, staring out at 2 graves. One held his daughter's name. The other held his heart. The wind moved through the trees like a memory. Jack ran his hand through his stubble, eyes heavy and red. Cooper was gone. But his mission wasn't. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled low. Jamie sat cross-legged on the floor, laptop open, the glow casting long shadows across the room. The digital story had gone viral. More than 2 million views in under 12 hours. Thousands of comments. Former military men coming forward. Government whistleblowers. Journalists. Everyone was suddenly interested in what Ellie had found. But it wasn't over. Mayor Ridge still hasn't been seen, she said. Jack nodded slowly. He won't surface until he thinks the dust has settled. Jamie tapped a key and pulled up a clip from a local news broadcast. Authorities have issued warrants for the arrest of Elkridge Mayor Alan Ridge, whose real identity, Stephen Ridgeson, links him to a wartime theft and a multimillion-dollar embezzlement ring. Sheriff Nora Denton, who allegedly helped conceal Ridge's identity, remains missing and is presumed to have fled. Jack turned the volume down. We know where he'll go, he said quietly. Back to where it all started. Jamie blinked. The church. Jack stood.
No.
The records. They returned to First Baptist that afternoon. Pastor Caleb was already waiting for them, standing in the hallway beside the confessionals, a small envelope in his hand. I knew you'd come back, he said, voice low. There's more. Jack took the envelope. Inside was a microcassette tape, labeled in delicate handwriting. Ellie brought that to me just 2 days before she disappeared, Caleb said. She didn't want it mailed. She said it was too dangerous. She wanted me to hide the truth where no one would think to look. So I did. Jack stared at the tape. And what's on it? Caleb looked at him with an expression somewhere between shame and fear. A confession, but not hers. The church's old audio system still had a working cassette player. The 3 of them sat in the tiny sound room behind the sanctuary as Caleb slid the tape into the slot and pressed play. The voice that emerged was distorted at first, but unmistakable. Stephen Ridgeson. If anyone finds this, you'll know I didn't mean for her to die. I just needed her quiet. The file. She shouldn't have seen it. There was a pause. I buried what we did. We all did. Greystone wasn't just a base, it was a cover. We moved weapons. Biological samples. The kind of thing people aren't supposed to know exists. She found the manifests. The photos. She said she'd go to the press. Another pause. I tried to scare her. Nothing more. But Denton panicked. Kincaid too. They said she ran. I never saw her again. But if you're hearing this. Static. I guess my past found me. The tape clicked. Silence. Jamie leaned back. Stunned. This is it. She whispered. The smoking gun. Jack didn't speak. He was staring through the wall. Past the wood, the brick, the centuries of dust and prayers. Then he stood abruptly. I need to see Ellie's school, he said. Jamie blinked. Her school. He nodded. She said she found photos. Manifests. That means she saw hard evidence. She wouldn't keep that on a flash drive. She wouldn't trust the cloud. She was old school. He turned to Caleb. She was in the yearbook club. Had access to the photo lab. Darkroom. The school had been shut down for renovations 6 months earlier. A new building was going up downtown, leaving the old campus hollowed and locked. But locks were just puzzles. Jack pried open the side door with a crowbar and stepped inside. Flashlight sweeping the halls. Dust curled in the beam like ghosts. They made their way to the photo lab. Old cabinets. Drying racks. Enlargers. All untouched. Jamie searched drawers while Jack moved to the back wall. A shelf had been knocked slightly askew. He reached behind it and found something taped to the wall. A slim binder, waterproof, sealed with duct tape. Inside, photographs.
Actual printed photographs.
Weapons caches. GPS coordinates. Soldiers in black masks moving crates under cover of night. One photo showed a man, his face half-turned, but unmistakably ridge, shaking hands with a foreign general. Jamie stared in disbelief. She had everything. Jack flipped to the last page. A single photo of Ellie holding the camera, smiling faintly. A post-it note stuck to the back. If anything happens to me, don't stop digging. Eh. Jack's hands began to shake. Jamie's voice cracked. We have to get this to the Department of Defense. Jack nodded. But as he turned toward the door, he froze. There, at the end of the hallway, stood a figure. Stephen Ridgeson. He wasn't in a suit anymore. He wore all black. Tactical. Armed. Jack shoved Jamie behind him. Run. Now. Ridgeson raised the gun. You just had to keep looking. Jack drew his pistol. You just had to stay dead. A shot rang out. Not from Jack. Glass exploded behind Ridgeson as Caleb, standing behind a classroom window, fired a hunting rifle from the church. Ridgeson staggered, ducked, and ran. Jack gave chase. The school became a war zone. Ridgeson moved like a predator, darting through halls, firing wildly. Jack kept low, his eyes scanning for traps, his instincts flaring. They ended up in the gymnasium. Wood floors. Echoes. Moonlight streaming through high windows. You're a damn ghost, Jack muttered. Ridgeson stepped out from behind the bleachers, weapon raised. So are you, he growled. You think this ends with me? Jack didn't blink.
No.
It ends with the truth. They both fired. Jack hit the shoulder. Ridgeson collapsed, screaming, blood spreading across the floor. Jack stood over him. You killed my daughter. Ridgeson gasped.
No.
Denton did. I just didn't stop it. Jack's hand tightened on the gun. Then Jamie stepped in, recorder in hand. It's done, she said. We have it all. Authorities arrived within the hour. Ridgeson was taken into custody, bleeding and silent. The church tape, the photographs, and Jamie's files became a national story. The country wanted blood. And for once, it looked like justice might bleed back. 2 weeks later, Jack stood once more at the graves. Snow had begun to fall. The world was quiet. Ellie, he whispered, you did it. You brought the truth home. He set the final photo down beside her marker. Cooper's old collar rested just below. And beneath them both, a plaque now read, in memory of 2 warriors. One with a camera, one with teeth. both with courage. Part 6. Bury the evidence. Jack should have known the story wouldn't end clean. The headlines said, justice. The town said, relief. The press said, redemption. But Jack knew better. Justice didn't show up in a clean suit. Crawled in, bleeding. It begged. It whispered threats before turning the knife. Stephen Ridgeson was in federal custody, and someone had already tried to make him disappear. Jamie sat at the cabin table, laptop open, knuckles white. They tried to move him last night. Quietly. No press.
No lawyers.
Jack paced the room. Let me guess. Transfer request from Homeland that never existed? She nodded. I only found out because one of my contacts in DC flagged it. The destination wasn't even on any government records. Jack stopped pacing. Black site. Or a grave. He stared at the floor. He's a liability. Not just to whoever's still in this, but to the country. They want him gone. Jamie leaned in. So what do we do? Jack turned, his voice a low growl. We make them afraid to bury him. The plan was simple, bring attention. So much that the government couldn't erase it. Jamie's files had gone public, but not all of them. There was one thing left to release. The full Greystone logs. Names, call signs, bass recordings. And Ellie's voice. Her raw, trembling testimony. The tape she left behind. Jack wasn't sure he could listen to it again. But he knew it was the only way to keep her alive. He placed the old recorder on the table. Caleb had restored the audio. It was clean now. Devastatingly clear. Jamie hit play. This is Ellie Marlowe. If you're hearing this, I'm probably gone. Jack turned away. My dad was a soldier. He always told me the truth mattered more than medals. That we fought for something real. So I'm going to tell the truth. Even if it's the last thing I do. Silence. Then, a faint breath. A pause. There's something happening in Elkridge. Something they buried. But Cooper found it. And I followed him. Jamie hit stop. That's enough, Jack said, voice cracked. Get it out there. The upload went live at 4 p.m. By 6 o'clock, it had 1 million views. By 8 o'clock, #EllieWasRight was trending across the country. The Department of Justice issued a public statement. And then the threats started. That night, Jack stood on the porch with his rifle slung across his back. The wind was sharp, cutting across his cheeks like knives. Snow swirled in slow spirals, covering the cabin in silence. Then the lights went out. Not inside. All of them. The porch. The road. The distant town glow. Power grid, gone. Jack didn't move. He stepped down, hand already on the rifle's grip. Jamie's voice came from inside. Jack, stay put. He moved through the snow like it was a battlefield. Then he saw it. Tire tracks in the fresh powder, stopping near the treeline. No engine.
No headlights.
But movement. 3 figures. They weren't locals. These were professionals. Quiet, dark-clad, weapons drawn. They came to finish what Ridgeson started. Jack moved behind the shed, waited until they crossed into open view, and opened fire. One went down instantly. The others scattered. One fired back, grazing the edge of the shed. Splinters flew past Jack's face. He retreated, circled through the brush, and caught the second man at the truck, trying to radio out. 2 shots. One to the shoulder, one to the leg. The man dropped. The third man was nowhere to be seen. Jack turned too late. A sharp blow struck his ribs, knocking him sideways into the snow. His rifle skidded away. The figure stepped over him, pistol raised. You should have kept quiet, Marlowe. Jack blinked through blood. Then came a snarl. From the dark. Something low. Furious.
Familiar.
Cooper? No.
Impossible.
But then the figure stumbled, tackled by a blur of fur and fury. Not Cooper. Another dog. A K9. Old, scarred. Wearing a vest. Letters barely visible. K9, C77. The third attacker screamed as the dog tore into his arm. Jack scrambled for his rifle, flipped, and fired. The man dropped. The dog stepped back, blood in its jaws, eyes trained on Jack. Jamie ran out moments later, wide-eyed. Where did that dog come from? Jack stared at the animal, then looked at the attacker's body. The man wore a patch on his chest. Kincaid's Security Solutions. They called in the feds the next morning. Real feds this time. Jack handed over the injured mercenary, the weapons cache the men had brought, and the dog now leashed calm, licking snow from its muzzle. I think he's one of ours, Jack said quietly. Retired. Abandoned. The agent, a tall man in a windbreaker with no smile, nodded solemnly. We'll debrief him. Jack raised an eyebrow. The agent smirked. Figuratively. Inside, Jamie updated her editor, who had already turned the attack into breaking news. The internet was ablaze with conspiracy theories. The truth, finally, was loud enough to drown them out. But Jack wasn't celebrating. He sat at the table with the dog beside him, feeding it scraps of jerky, staring at the empty spot where Cooper's bed had been. He saved me, Jack whispered. Jamie nodded, eyes soft. So did she, he added. Ellie, he nodded. She kept digging, and when we didn't listen, Cooper did. Now this one. He picked up where Coop left off. He looked at the dog. You've got fight in you, don't you? The dog wagged its tail once. That evening, Jamie closed her laptop and sat beside him. They won't bury this anymore. Every attempt to silence us just made it louder. Jack nodded. But they're still out there, he said. People who were part of this. People who think they're above it all. We keep fighting. He stared into the fire.
No.
We build something better.
Something de permanent.
She tilted her head. Like what? Foundation. In Ellie's name. For whistleblowers. For war dogs. For anyone who gets left behind. Jamie smiled. That's what she would have wanted. Jack looked at the new dog, curled at his feet. And he needs a name. Jamie grinned. Any ideas? Jack thought for a moment. Echo. Outside, the snow fell heavier now, but it didn't matter. Jack stood at the edge of the graves once more, holding a small wooden sign. He planted it between Ellie and Cooper. Burned into the wood. They tried to bury them, but they didn't know they were seeds. Part 7. The Dog That Dug Up the Truth. It had been 3 months since the night Jack Marlowe should have died. Instead, something unexpected happened. He healed. Not all at once. Not completely, but enough to breathe differently. To sit on the porch again and watch the world without feeling like it was slipping through his fingers. Enough to listen when the wind carried voices he used to avoid. Enough to walk out into the sun without the weight of guilt pulling him back inside. Justice hadn't come in a straight line, but it had come. Because of a girl with a camera and a dog with a memory. The world now knew the name Ellie Marlowe. Not just as the daughter of a retired soldier. Not as a tragic loss in a quiet town. But as the girl who uncovered a global truth. The girl who connected a fugitive war criminal to a forgotten scandal. Who chased the facts even when it chased her back. And because she refused to stop digging, others had started. Jack sat in a small press room at the Department of Defense in D.C., watching the televised hearing play on a flat screen bolted to the wall. Jamie sat beside him, her pen scribbling notes even as the room sat silent. And due to the overwhelming evidence presented, the speaker said, adjusting her glasses at the podium, this committee formally recommends the declassification of all Greystone-related operations between 2005 and 2009. The camera panned across the panel. Faces were pale. One man whispered something to another, jaw clenched. And then she added, in honor of Eleanor Ellie Marlowe, whose courage and persistence forced us to confront what we buried. The gallery erupted in applause. Jack didn't clap. He just looked down at the dog sleeping at his feet. Echo. The retired K9 had healed too. Ribs less visible now, wounds closed, eyes brighter. But every once in a while, he'd wake in the night and wander to the grave in Jack's yard. Sit there a while, then come back. Like he remembered someone who taught him how to fight again. That night, Jack returned home. Snow was beginning to melt. The trees looked less skeletal, the wind a little less harsh. Spring had arrived early in Elkridge. As if the earth wanted to start over, too. The cabin hadn't changed. But Jack had. He walked out to the hill behind the house with Echo at his side. Two simple headstones waited for him in the clearing. One marked Ellie Marlowe, the other K9 Cooper. Between them, wildflowers had begun to grow. Bluebells and dandelions. Quiet, unforced. Jack crouched, placed a new photo frame in the grass. It was a picture of Ellie, her arms around Cooper, her hair tucked under a ball cap, both of them beaming like they just solved a mystery. Behind them, a cardboard sign. Truth always wins. He stood, took a breath, and looked out across the town. He didn't hate it anymore. Not all of it. The Ellie and Cooper Foundation launched 2 weeks later. Its mission was simple: protect the forgotten. Retired war dogs, discarded handlers, silenced whistleblowers. The foundation offered legal aid, shelter, therapy, and, most importantly, community. It partnered with K9 units across the country and established a public database for retired service animals who could still serve as therapy dogs or companions. The story had touched millions, but none more than the veterans who had felt unseen until now. Jack wasn't just a grieving father anymore. He was a founder, a fighter, and a voice. Jamie returned to New York, promoted to senior investigative correspondent at a major network. But she kept in touch. Weekly calls, dog treats in the mail, a photo of her, grinning beside a plaque that read, Pulitzer nomination, Ellie's War. Jack framed it and hung it in the hallway, right beside Ellie's varsity jacket. One morning, Jack found Echo standing at the edge of the yard, nose to the wind. He followed his gaze. A boy, maybe 12, stood at the tree line, one hand clenched nervously at his side. He wore worn-out sneakers and a shirt 3 sizes too big. Behind him, a foster caseworker waited by the car. The boy looked scared. Alone. Jack nodded once to the caseworker, who waved and returned to the vehicle. He walked toward the boy, slow, careful. "You must be Adam," Jack said softly. The boy nodded. Echo padded over and sat beside him. Adam reached out, unsure, and touched the dog's head. Echo didn't move. Then the tail wagged. Once, Jack smiled. "You know, that dog doesn't warm up to just anyone." Adam didn't speak, but he smiled. Jack knelt beside him. "You hungry?" A nod. "Come on," Jack said, placing a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "We've got pancakes and stories. You ever hear about the dog that saved a town?" Adam shook his head. "You will." They walked toward the cabin, side by side. Echo followed, tail swaying. Later that week, a letter arrived. Unmarked envelope. No return address. Just Jack's name, handwritten. Inside, a single note. "They offered me witness protection. Declined. I'm heading south. I'll do what I can from the outside. For her. N." Jack stared at it for a long time. Nora Denton. Disgraced sheriff. Broken compass. Perhaps now something else. There was no return address. Just a fingerprint at the bottom. Smudged. Deliberate. Jack folded the letter and slipped it into the fireplace. Some ashes were better left warm. Spring melted into summer. The foundation expanded. Veterans arrived. Dogs arrived. Families came to say thank you. One day, a news crew showed up unannounced. They asked Jack how he wanted to be remembered. He looked past the camera, to the porch swing where Adam and Echo sat reading a picture book, to the wildflowers, to the truth. "I don't," he said quietly, "but I hope they remember her." The night of the 1-year anniversary of Ellie's death, Jack lit 2 candles, one for her, one for Cooper. He sat between their graves, the dog asleep in the grass beside him, Adam curled under a blanket in the hammock nearby. The stars shimmered. The wind was soft, and in that sacred silence, Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Epilogue. A legacy that lives. Some stories end quietly. Others echo. The world never saw the bullet that hit Ellie, but it heard her voice again and again. until the silence had to answer. And it never forgot the dog who refused to stop digging. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come with sirens. Sometimes it comes on four legs, with dirt on its paws, and eyes that remember,